Hello everyone, it's Professor Ino095 over here. So today, Festival Collection 2024, Festival Booster 2024 is already out today. So I think it will be a little bit special to try to like say that with the new two OTs coming out, I'll probably like do a little bit of something special of like ranking the Overtriggers. So far, but of course, since this is a rather new the overtriggers is kind of bit new, and of course everything is always subjected to my opinion, so there could be some things that you might disagree with. I think that's fine, but other than that, I think I would do that ranking in this video. So that's about it. And before we get into the straight into that video, here's a message from our sponsor, and I'll see you guys on the ranking segment. This video is sponsored by My Metal Cards at Etsy.com. So yes, this is a new upcoming shop which specializes in selling like a lot of metal cards. So hence the name. So it ranges and specializes in like a lot of games such as Cardfight Vanguard, MTG, and Warhammer. So in this case, if you see here for Vanguard, they have energy counters for every nation. There's also like treasure tokens for MTG. There's also like plenty other designs for Vanguard, such as like fated ones. There's also like nation ones, and also it comes with acrylic ones. It's more transparent acrylic ones, so that's pretty cool. If you want to get one of these, that's also nice. And also there's plenty of other designs which are not in this shop, but you can custom pre-order them. You can like order them customly, such as like my Chronojet black and white energy counter, which is like 0 to 10. There's also like black and white like nation cards such as like Brungate, which I have over here, and also like they have like IoT energy like energy markers, energy counters, which I have like all three, like bronze, silver, gold respectively. So that's about it. And also, if you go to this shop and have the coupon code Enochsays, 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 you get $5 off for your first purchase of one of these metal cards as well. So five again. Enochsays, ENOCHSAYS, for $5 off for your first purchase. And do check them out. There's plenty of designs, and you can use them to spicify your decks, make it bling, make it fancy. Do keep in mind that since these are custom-made energy markers or whatsoever, counters or whatsoever, you cannot use them in like official Bushiroad tournaments. But you can use them as a form of like collection or whatsoever. And there you go. Just pick one of these up, and hopefully you like them. I like it personally, so do give them the support. And that's about it. I'll see you in the next video. Okay. Alright, okay, so we are moving on to the segment of like ranking all of the Overtriggers right now. So okay, of course, if you notice, right here is all the 11 nations and the generic ones. And if you notice something, I did not put in like some of the collab nations one, like Records of Ragnarok, Tokyo Rambu, Monster Strike, yada yada yada, and all that stuff, right? Bang Dream, etc. Right? Part of the reason is that like and number one, these are all rogue decks, so we don't really see them very often in the meta. So I felt like they're kind of like unnecessary to try to like review like what's good and what's bad. And also like I'm looking. Second of all, I'm looking at this at the perspective of like saying the majority of the mainline boosters and the games and whatnot. So I'm just arguing in that kind of perspective. Also, number three, of course, since this is since Overtrigger is like one of the most the special the special characteristic of the D format, the D standard format. I'm just gonna be arguing in the context of standard, but of course, a little bit of premium stuff can be also technically put into consideration, but mostly I would say I would put it like in the context of D and all that stuff, right? So that's one thing.
The reason why I did not try to put in the collab nations is that I did not play them, I did not have much experience with them, and honestly speaking, I do not know much about them, so you can hold that against me because I just don't know how these decks work in general, right? So like Tokerabu or Rakens, Ragnarok, and yada yada, Tokerabu, all that. So I'm not gonna bother myself with all that stuff. So yes, let's go straight into one of the get into the first one, which is Dragvida. So of course, Dragvida is pretty interesting. It is legitly one of the best nations, I would say, like nation overtriggers that like a Bushido can really offer. Because like the Vanguard restanding and having you to drive check multiple times, or like in the case of like say for example like Dragonite Overlord DN, with Dragonite Overlord in the soul, it's actually like if you can drive check this, you can drive check 6 times, right? And which is good. And you can also play this in Gandiva, you can play this in like Eugene, for God's sake, if that deck is still viable at all. Vidrua or anything like that. There's also like some certain exceptions, of course, because you can't play this in Shiranui because Shiranui is Shiranui is being restricted with this currently. You're not gonna play this in Bagra, you're not gonna play this Z-Lance. Because like their skills requires you to withstand at the end of the battle. So if you drive check this, and I think that defeats the whole purpose of like playing this OT. But nonetheless, it's like really legitimately good because it kind of like throws off like your opponent's like defenses and most of the time. I think that goes to all of like I think this goes all to Overtriggers in general, like throwing off like your defenses. But I think that the legit pressure of like Dragvida was that like you can possibly like having that critical triggers, and like if you have any dark restrict or whatsoever, it's gonna be like pretty insane. It's like pretty scary. So I have like PTSD fighting a friend of mine who plays like Dragon Empire decks and he never fails to check the Dragvida, even in Z-Lance, and you can give props to that. I don't know how he does it, but it is what it is. So yeah, Dragvida is pretty good. Even in like premium format, if I veer off a little bit into premium format, if like play Dragvida is also like pretty strong as well, because like the strides can restand and then just swing with it and whatnot. It's pretty good. It's pretty nice. So probably one of the most played nation OTs, I would say. Not the most, but one of the most, because virtually you don't see any Dragon Empire decks that does not play Dragvida, right? So because it's way too good in the general sense, right? In Ichika or whatsoever, it also pretty good. So it works pretty well. So that's one part of it. So that's Dragvida for the time being. The second one is going to be like Dark States one. Dark States additional effect is that you until the end of this game, during your turn, your Vanguard plus 10k plus 1 crit. Now it is a very strong skill. I'm not gonna like deny that. It's pretty nice. It's pretty awesome. But 50 to 60 or even 70% of the time, like most Dark States deck will not play this OT in general, because I felt like it's like your opponent will definitely is gonna PG like your Vanguard most of the time, right? So unless you're going to say that you're gonna play decks that has a restand, your decks that has like guard restrict or like additional crit or effect whatsoever, like Fafnir or Mina Grigio, Chrono Jet with the GB2 guard restrict, Blankmire, Greedon. I think that are the most best examples of like how you utilize this the Dark States trigger in like overall. You're not gonna play this in like Unica, you're not gonna play this in Daifudol, you're not gonna play this in like say Lucre or anything like that of the sorts. So it's not a bad card, but I felt like it's neither good nor bad. I think it's pretty balanced as well. So, like depending on where you are, and it's like depending on matchups. If you drive check this OT early game, is basically just like a game over. Like your opponent's just gonna probably have to scoop at the end of the day. But then again, if they can manage to withstand it, I think that's fine. Other than that, I think this is a very solid OT. It's just not as solid as the rest of the other ones, but I think we can get straight into that. I think that's all for the time being for the Dark States OT. The third one is Elder Breath. Oh, let's talk about Elder Breath. I think Elder Breath is legitimately one of the best nation OTs that like Bushido has ever to offer. I think for this time round, I would have to put that the S tier. I think this is the peak, right? The best of the best of like all of the OTs we've encountered so far. It's extremely hilarious because like I think not only this is the most common like over trigger that you can play in virtually all of the front gate decks. There's like I've rarely seen like decks that has like an alternatives like playing the blue OT, the red OT. Like even Messiah plays the this Aldo Breath, even Rotovisor plays Aldo Breath, even like I don't know, like I mean Ember is like the best example of like using this over trigger and win games because like of obscurity. Because like with a 33k double crit suddenly increases to 66k full crit, right? And if like you power the 100 million, also the 100 million doubles to 400 million. So I think that's like really offensive, really scary. So unless your opponent doesn't have like a lot of PGs, like if they don't have much PGs in their hand, it's basically just GG WP, like shake hand, call it a day, and that's about it, right? So like Aldo Breath is insane, right? So it's kind of been broken because like I really can't imagine like what's the I can't imagine what's the situation is gonna be like. Like if you play this in premium, also it's gonna be like, very funny. Because like decks like Dimension Police, Nova Grapplers, and other stuff, Link Joker as well. It's gonna be like so scary with all the 100 million double crit. And you know, increasing the front row units like double the power and double the crits. I think this is very good, right? I think nothing beats Aldo Breath at the end of the day. So that's one thing. So moving on to the lyrical monastery OT. I think there's like 5 variations of this. But all of the 5 variations technically have the same skill. The skill is the additional effect is that during your turn, you get all of your rear guards plus 10k until the end of turn. Until the end of turn, and this effects last for the whole game, right? Now, honestly speaking, let's talk about this Overtrigger for a bit, right? Because like I think it was in last year, LBT04, the Lyrical Booster 04, where like they have like one box, you guarantee like one lyrical OT. The price of the OT just suddenly drops so fast. The pink background one with the demon or the succubus one, I don't remember. Is it a demon or succubus? I think it's a demon, right? And you know, since they have like reprinted that so much that essentially nowadays, if you want to get like one lyrical OT with that variation, it's only the 1 ringgit to 3 ringgit, right? It just doesn't really matter unless you're the type of person that wants to like get all the 5 different versions of the Overtrigger, and I think you should be fine. But yeah, honestly speaking, if you want to talk about the skill, right, I feel say that I have to put it in B. I think it's pretty bad. I think like lyrical Overtrigger when it first came out, during like DBT01, when the D standard was at its like first, it is technically a very good Overtrigger. But as time goes by, you know, with new Overtriggers coming in and lyrical OT just dropped so fast, and like virtually there's not many lyrical decks that can actually like play like this lyrical OT in general. Like Billy Star, what else? Let's say for example like Billy Star, Fennel, Labrador, Kyrie, they don't even use this OT anymore. I think it's like pretty sad. Like even in premium, in the context of premium as well, there's always like better options, there's always better alternatives for you to play. So I felt like it's probably like one of the worst of the worst of, I mean like personally speaking, because everything is just, you know, my personal opinion, I felt like there's not much for you to like pump this much power when you have like a lot of power to begin with, right? Unless of course you're playing like decks that doesn't have much power in like to begin with, like I don't know, like Leofa, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't have really much with experience with like lyrical decks, but I can know for sure that most lyrical decks nowadays would not consider the lyrical OT as one of their main OTs to go to, because they will preferably play the blue OT, they will preferably play the red OT and whatnot, right? So that's one thing for sure. Alright, moving on, I think let's talk about the Festival Booster. Alright, let's talk about the Festival Booster Overtriggers, because that's the whole point of me like trying to like bring into the attention, because you know, Festival Booster, as I mentioned earlier in this video, you know, Festival Booster is just released today, so I just want to like emphasizing a little bit of like the new OTs. So we are talking about the yellow OT or the white OT. For me, it looks like yellow to me, so I'm just gonna call it the yellow OT, which is the what Nedorambia, I don't remember what's the name of it, but it's like very complex name. I'm just gonna call it the yellow OT. The additional effect is that like when you drive check this OT, for each of your opponents, two open regard circles, two open circles, you get to draw one, and then you get to retire all of your opponent's guardians as well. So which is really strong and which is really powerful. So in the most best case scenario, in the maximum sense, that if you drive check this card, you can draw a maximum of like 3 cards, because like say 5 empty regard circles and 1 empty guardian circle makes it like 6, so you can draw 3. And if you check this Overtrigger, obviously you have to draw 1, so which means that you can draw 4 at the end of the day. I think it's really good. This is such a really good draw engine, and not to mention it gets to retire like all of your opponent's guardians as well. So like against but I also have to like emphasize on the fact that like this does not negate the PG on hit. Does not hit effect, so it doesn't really remove that PG the PG skill. But however, if like say that if they want to like hard guard everything, like say I will like say OT to pass or 58k to pass, this just if you drive check this trigger, you just have to destroy all that guardian circle, all of your guardians, so your opponent's guardians, and the attack will still hit regardless. And you can also like pump up the 100 million to one of your other units as well. I think which is like really insane as well, because like at the end, like you will still hit regardless because of that. One of the few discussions and one of the few decks that I've seen like people try to play this is in Blank Mania, because like if you activate like Blank Mania's Divine Skill where you cannot PG for the whole turn, you have a double crit. Essentially you have to force your opponent to hard guard everything, and then if you drive check this trigger, is basically Drover, because like everything is like all of your opponent's guardians is just like nothing, it's just completely wasted. And then you can hit your opponent with like 2 crit, and then you can power the 100 million to somewhere else, right? Which is like pretty lethal and pretty scary. And in that particular context, in that particular scenario, I think like sometimes decks with guard restricts, or like cannot use sentinels, or like have to 2 or more to guard, is the time where like this OT shines the most. And like not to mention that if you're going to play this like in the context of premium, in where like you play Daikaiser, where you can like retire your opponent's like PG on hit effects of like retire guardians as well, this is also one of the best OTs to play with. Definitely I would say like it's one of my I think like in this set, one of my most favorite ones. I think I'll prefer to play this because I honestly don't see anywhere else where I can actually like play this OT. But of course, everything is a process of trial and error. And of course, like these two OTs in general, like the purple OT and the yellow OT, they have like a lot of future potentials and future values. So maybe for a few weeks or few months after I make this, this ranking, the meta might shift, the meta might change, and depending on what people actually wants to play, I think it's fine to like whether or not they want to pick this and they want to pick that as well. So I say like that this is one of the most interesting ways to like introduce the OTs with like the destroying the guardians, and having your opponent, like having your vanguard to hit with like your opponent as well. So which is good. The next one is the purple OT. Is like this one is the light, and this one is the dark OT. So technically speaking, the dark OT, the name is like Nyx, something like that. But like spoiler alert. The reason why I memorized this name is Nyx is because like it is the final boss of like Persona 3. So that's why I like memorize it as Nyx. Also like Nyx skill. The Nyx skill is that like when you drive check this card, you choose one card from your damage zone, add it to your hand, and then you choose one card from your hand, you call it to the Rigor Circle, and then plus 10k at the end of the turn. So which is good. In general, it's not that bad because essentially it's technically a free heal for you, and it definitely does. Excuse me. It actually like does the same thing as what Velvet does in like saying like calling a card from your hand. So which means that you can proc off or like trigger off like some of the cards that can do multi like superior calling, thereby if you can do like a multi attack, you can free to do so. I think that's the best part of it. However, I have a mixed feeling about this OT in general. If I were to argue in the context of a competitive format in a 25-minute setting, in a tournament setting, healing is the least favorable outcome I want to go to, because I just want to finish games fast, and like I felt like if I heal a lot, like even like without the like even with like the heal triggers and whatnot and all that stuff, I kind of be like afraid of like how you say, like drag the game a little bit longer than it should be. And also like sometimes it can mess up with your strategies at times, because like say for example, if you are a deck that relies on so many open CDs on early game, drive checking this card early game might mess up your strategy, because in my own personal opinion, okay, you might need to use the counter blast for like extra attacks, extra draw, extra plus power, and all that stuff. I think that can be useful at times, and like I felt like if you reduce that kind of like one CD, I think it takes away like one of your resources. Sure, you can heal one, you have the offensive and whatnot, but like you felt like you could have done more with that. You kind of have like something that you could like something that can finish that turn, a kill turn or something like that, right? In late game, I would say that late game is also like pretty awesome as well, because like you can heal anything if like you are 5 damage. So technically, in a sense, like this is your 5th heal per se, but like Overtriggers has always been considered as the 5th heal of the game. Because if you have damage check and OT, you can always instantly remove it, but this one is just gives you the extra additional heal. For me, I would say that like some decks can benefit from this. Like if I argue in the context of premium, Angel Feather, Gold Paladins, or whatsoever, or like a Royal Paladins in general, anything that I can call and that can activate the on-call effect, I think is going to be like very nice. And also like Angel Feathers can always like swap, swap your triggers out for something. Like say like if you have a PG or you have like Gabriel in your damage zone, I can always pick it up. I can use it for strike. I can use it for like riding and get my imaginary gift, yada yada, and all that stuff, right? So it's good. But overall feeling I have, it's kind of like mid in all at the same time as well, because the 10k power is definitely gives you an extra attack, but like if your bot is already all good, all set up, I don't see a reason why you can play this. So personally speaking, I'll put this at B. I'll put it as a B. I definitely, honestly speaking, it's a very mid Overtrigger. But of course, things can change within a few weeks or in a few months. It always depends. Like there's always like more future decks to come up with, and I think that it's going to be like a lot of like potential as well. But I think these two Overtriggers has a lot of potential value, and maybe in the near future, this Overtrigger can be found useful, and I can bump it up to A. But that's my own personal opinion. I haven't been trying testing enough with this to make a complete conclusion. But judging by how like I've seen like a lot of discussions around this Overtrigger that said like they kind of agree it's a little bit mid. It can be useful in certain situations. It can save your life, but overall, it's not a very game changing. It's not a game finisher OT. So I can agree with that sentiments of that. Of course, if you can justify as like why this OT can be a little bit higher, you can always put it in the comment section down below. Just tell me your reasons why, and if you can, if it also like extends to the whole general of this video, if you have like any other like arguments to be made, like why some ranking is just not fair compared to others, or like you feel like some Overtriggers might be better than the other, you can put it in the comment section down below, and we can have to talk from there, we can argue from there, and that's about it, right? Let's move on to the other OTs as well, which is the generic OT, which is Ovaria. So Ovaria is the generic OT that comes in at the beginning of D series, where you can get this in like a lot of like start decks with like Yu, Mirai, Danji, and all of the start decks in the beginning. So the additional effect is that like aside from him getting another 100 million, you can also get another extra 100 million. So in a sense that this is a 200 million power like Overtrigger. So theoretically speaking, and you can pump like one of your units to 100 million, right? Or you can just split the power to 100 million one side, 100 million one side, right? So I put it at C because honestly speaking, Ovaria is not the best of the OT, but however, I would say like it's like one of the most budget OTs that people can find, even if you can't afford to buy your own nation OTs, which is, I felt like it's a little bit skeptical because like nation OTs nowadays is dirt cheap. Like at next is like you're gonna get around like 20 to 25 ringgit or 30 ringgit along those lines. Like if you're in Malaysia, I'm not sure like what's the equivalent in USD. So I'm just talking like in terms of like Malaysian ringgit, right? It's like probably like around like 30 to 25 ringgit and all that stuff. But of course, if you want to be like very budget, if you want to be like very pressure and whatnot, because pumping 100 million to 2 units is also not that bad as well, right? And sometimes it can finish games, provided if your opponent doesn't have enough to guard and whatsoever. And I can foresee this like playing out in like some decks that can actually work. For example, like in Roroba, for example, with like Momoke Radilinea and the Great Tree Radilinea as well. Or you can play combo this off with like Chaos, Mikani, Quenlu, with the guard restricts, or anything with like guard restricts, or any rear guards that can withstand as well, like Rokagor, Zamuk in Blankmire with the 2 crit. So I think it's good as the most base budget wise of like pumping 100 million to both sides and giving like advantage as well. But I felt like at the end of the day, like Obaria is just not not the easiest. I mean, it's easier to pick up. It's because like it's everywhere. But I felt like you might also just invest in a much more better options like the Blue OT or anything else, like depending on what you want to play, right? And that's about it. So the next Overtrigger we'll be talking about is like Amati Noah. So I felt like, okay, my god, let's talk. I want to rant about Amati Noah in the first place, right? Yeah. Initially when Amati Noah came out, the only reason why it's actually good back then is because of Bastion, where you can actually like drive check with like twice, because like grade 3 drive check, you get twin drive, right? But in the rest of the other captor decks like Hexa Orb, Soliron, or like or anything like Luwad, Luhan, or whatsoever, all of the captor decks after that, it's just jack shit useless. I can honestly tell you this, it's just like I would put you at D. I would really put Amati Noah at D, because like the drive checking is just like, there is a little bit of pressure. Sure, I can definitely argue with the fact that like the drive checking pressure, if your opponent has 4 damage, you either force your opponent to PG, or you'll be lucky enough to check a critical trigger and you win the game, right? And just or you'll force your opponent to just take 1 damage and and all that stuff, right? But I felt like there is so much alternatives in this meta, in this game right now, that I felt like Amati Noah is just jack shit useless, and I felt like there can be so many other alternatives that you can play with this, right? And if I were to be a little bit lenient, if I were to be like be more generous, if I were to argue this in the context of premium, like in Jewel Knights, in MLB, or like in Automal, like you can if you drive check this early, like early turn, early battle, where you can drive check with your Vanguard, with Salome, and if there's drive check the Captain OT, you can like the subsequent attacks you do after that, you can drive check a lot, right? So I think that's like one way to like see that there's a lot of potential there. In the sense of that you can keep on drive checking with like every time you rear swings, which is good, and I'm not saying that's bad, because that's like plenty of pressure. But if I were to argue like specifically in the context of this series, I think this Overtrigger just disappoints me, and I think everybody can agree with me on that. Unless you're one of that 1% that just feels that Amati Noah is actually good, I don't blame it on you. Put it in the comment section down below as to why you feel that way. For me, I don't see there's much good potential coming out from this this Overtrigger in general. Like hell, like this Overtriggers, like the lyrical and the captor OTs. Literally nobody in this D standard plays these Overtriggers anymore, because they've moved on to like much more better alternatives. They've moved on to better things like the blue OT or the red OT or whatsoever, right? Or any other like the new Nyx and the yellow OT, right? So it's so much better. Why play those, right? So you get what I'm saying. So I'm sorry, Amati Noah, and the lyrical OT, you guys are in the rock bottom, so I'm not gonna talk about it, right? I just really ranted about, because like even then Bastion is not gonna play that this OT. They would prefer to play the blue OT instead. So it's like hit rock bottom and Martino isn't doing any better. So that's about it. That's my rant for Martino for the time being. So next one is like the Stoic here OT is Blast Favor. So Blast Favor's additional effect is that when you drive check this card, you get to like draw one card, front row plus 10k, choose one unit plus one crit, and if your damage is more or equal than your opponent's damage, you get to heal one, right? So essentially it boils down to TLDR. This is critical trigger, heal trigger, draw trigger, front trigger, all mixed into one. And of course, if you drive check this card, additional effect is that you get to draw one card, right? Because of the OT effect. So it means that you get to draw two cards at the end of that day. It's good. But however, I felt like a little bit iffy. Sometimes, Stoic here, this Overtrigger is definitely like, I think it's the third most nation, like the played nation OT. Because there are plenty of decks in Stoic here that might find this card like really necessary and very helpful, because like decks like Lianon, Granfia, what else? Zorga. Okay, Zorga is debatable because like I've seen, like if you're going to talk about like Zorga and Andir with the Divine Skill, that they play the red OT, the Lulu Zulu or whatsoever. I think this is like plausibly like it can be a very good alternative at times. Because you need the draw power, you need to power up like your rear guards as well. You need to give the crit to another rear guard as well, which is really good. I think this is a very pressuring OT in a sense, because it's the same thing as the blue OT where you can assign the crit not only to the bank but you can assign it to somewhere else. So I think in my personal scenario, like opinion, in a scenario where like if you play Magnolia Elder, where your numbers are pretty small unless you're playing Dinosla, this Overtrigger sometimes can help you a lot in a particular sense, because like you have to pump your front row powers, you can get like your one crit somewhere else, you can get to heal and whatnot, and you can also increase your hand size as well. Not that inlet cost is there, but it definitely helps change the game, like your defenses a little bit much better. So I felt like I felt like the Stoic here OT is still relevant after this day. It hasn't really fallen off as much, is my own personal opinion. But I felt like there are plenty of decks that can definitely like make use of this, like Stoic here decks can make use of it. But other than that, I felt like maybe this is just me, but I felt like as time goes by, when Stoic here decks, more Stoic decks are coming out, I felt like Stoic here OT just doesn't seem to be played as much. But in terms of its skill wise, I think it's definitely very good, very useful in certain situations. But other than that, I think it's good. It's still there. It's just that I feel like some decks are slowly like ditching the Stoic here OT for something else. But it's okay. It's fine. Here we talk about like last year's festival booster Overtriggers, which is first of all, which is the red OT, where the additional skill is that if you draft check this card, you can choose one of your standing rear guards, and it gets the effect once per turn at the end of the battle that this unit attack, you can restand it and you can attack it again, right? Or if not, if you cannot choose a standing rear guard, you can choose one card from your hand and call it to the rear guard circle, right? And then, of course, since it's an Overtrigger, you can also pump the 100 million there as well, right? So you can swing for like 100 million early game as well. And not to mention that it's because there is like the option of like saying that calling cards that can proc for additional attacks. It's also like pretty good. If like you can call like for example, Calbre, you can just like call Counter Blast on Soul Blast 1 and you just go top 3 and then you get to call 1. So you have another additional attack, which is kind of nice. Valnot is an interesting one because I've seen these decks usually played in like multi-attack decks, like Rorowa is one thing, because like Rorowa you can say, I've mentioned earlier, you can pump the 100 million to Momoke, then you can Radilinia gets the power of like Momoke, and then you have the grade 3 Radilinia to call it out, and then you can just gain the power, which is good. Lascaria is also like one of the few decks that I've seen that can play the red OT on, and Draduold in a sense like can play, but I felt like you can play the blue OT. Decks that generally can multi-attack is like one of the best ones. Blankmire is also one of them, because like Zamu can swing for like I would say like 100 million 2 crit every time, as long as you have like 9 energy to spare, because like if you want to get crit, you have to energy blast 3 consistently all the time. So I think this is like pretty good as well in a divine skill setting. Also like in that kind of specific scenarios, I think this is actually like pretty good. So it's very hard to rate the red OT, because sometimes in some decks it can be sorry, not a C. Sometimes it can be an A, sometimes it can be a B. I'm going to rate it somewhere around like low A, high B. It's good, it's very situational at times, but I felt like it has its good levels of potential when it comes to like scenarios and your like what your deck does in certain matchups, and what does your deck want to do, right, at the end of the day. So I felt like this is probably the most generous and the most lenient way of like how I want to rate this OT in general. So yes, that's about it. Last but not least, let's talk about Eidos Pharaoh, the blue OT, right? So Eidos Pharaoh is the additional effect is pretty cool. Is that when you drive check this card, you can choose one of your units plus one crit, and then you can choose one card from your drop zone, and then you add it to your hand. Now, this is probably one of the most overplayed and overused Overtriggers right now in the current meta, in the current format, in D standard, is just because like the ways of like how you picking up like cards in your drop zone can make the most differences, right? You can pick up your PGs, you can pick up your Elemental Sanctitude if it's in the drop zone and not like if you excluded it, like if you banished it, or like say like if you want to bounce back your Persona, right? You want to bounce back your T card or whatsoever. I think it's good. I think it is a very very good card, and like aside from that, you can also assign that one critical trigger to like one of your units as well, which makes it the same thing as like the Dark States OT and Stoic Kia, but unlike the Dark States one, sorry, the crit is specifically only for the Vanguard. Like Stoic Kia, you can assign the crit to anywhere you want, so it can finish games. It's like definitely one of the ways that it is definitely one of the game-changing and one of the most game finisher OTs I've seen for quite some time. And you know, like I've mentioned earlier, there's plenty of decks right now in this standard format that can play this OT, like Vilista, Labrador, Drajuold. You know, initially I was playing the Darkseid's OT in Drajuold last time. If you recall the time that when I was saying that I did a deck profile on Drajuold, I used the Darkseid's OT. But of course, I did mention that the blue OT, I kind of regret that I didn't bought the blue OT now, but I did borrow my friends for like the WGP Season 1 this year, and it makes a lot of difference. Honestly speaking, I felt like the blue OT just does make a lot of difference. And not to mention, I feel like right now, in Shiranu, you can technically play this card as well, alongside with the red OT. That's also one of the few alternatives I've seen as well. So I think that's about like what's my overall conclusion of like how I rate these Overtriggers. And you know, of course, if you have any other opinions, you can feel free to like put it down in the comment section down below, and you can probably just give you a bit of like justification, like say why do you want to play this deck, this OT in your deck, etc, etc. Right? So I would love to hear from you. I would love to see like what you guys are cooking. So I think that's about it. I think I'll see you guys on the next video. Yeah, I'll see you guys next time. This has been Professor Inazun Nangpai. Wee.